Imagine this. Young woman comes home late at night. She opens the door of her apartment building. She steps inside and she vanishes. Just like that. No screams, no witnesses, no trace. Nothing. Nothing except the keys left behind in the elevator. This is not fiction. This is a real disappearance of a 28-year-old Irina. Everything happened back in 2009. It was the warm September day, Tuesday. Irina came back home from her work. She worked as a child psychologist at the support center. So she came back home and she was getting ready for her date with her boyfriend, a 27-year-old Alexander. They were planning to see a movie that night. Irina wasn't living alone. She lived with her 10-year-old son, Andrei, and her brother, Ilya. That night, little Andrei was sitting on the couch and watching TV. Then his mom came up to him and asked a question she had never asked before. She asked for Andrei's permission to go to the movies. Andrei was surprised because his mom never asked him for permission. But of course he said yes, she can go. He wasn't waiting for her because he had school the next day and he used to his mom going out, so he went to bed early. The next day, Andrei woke up early at 7 a.m. and went to his mom's room, but she was not there. Bed was made, the room was light, as if she hadn't come home at all. Then the phone rang, and it was Alexander, Irina's boyfriend. He asked, "Is your mom home?" Andrei said that she wasn't, and I thought she was with you. And Alexander said, "No, she wasn't with me either." That was basically the end of the call, and Andrei went to school. As he would later recall, that day felt completely normal. He didn't feel scared, he didn't feel anxiety or anything because he didn't understand that he will never see his mom again at that point. Everything that I will say next is allegedly happened according to Alexander. So Tuesday night, Alexander picks Irina up in his silver minivan and they're heading to the movies. The movie ended at 11:30 p.m. and they were heading back to Irina's home. At 11:55 p.m., Alexander stopped near her building. They got there quickly. There were no traffic at night. They stopped and talked a bit. Irina started looking for her keys in the purse while they were still talking in the car. Then she got out. Alexander didn't walk her all the way to the entrance. As he usually did, he watched her for about 10 to 20 seconds, made sure she entered the building, and then he drove away. So around 12 a.m., Irina entered the building. 15 minutes later, Alexander sent Irina 2 text messages asking if she's home by now, if she's made it safely to her apartment. But he didn't receive any answer. This had happened before, so her silence didn't trigger him. And I'll make a quick spoiler here because when Alexander sent those messages, he believed that they were delivered to Irina. But later we'll find out that they were not. By that time, her phone was already turned off. Why? We don't know. Maybe the battery died. Maybe Irina turned it off. Maybe it was turned off by someone else. But we do know from phone records that Alexander sent those 2 messages. Irina just didn't receive them. The next morning, Irina was supposed to go to work. Sometimes Alexander would pick her up and drive her to work. So at 7:22 a.m., he gave her a call, but she didn't answer. At 7:25 a.m., he dialed her landline, and her son Andrei answered. That's when both Alexander and Andrei realized that Irina didn't make it home the previous night. While Andrei went to school, Irina's brother Ilya immediately went to the police and filed a missing persons report. Andrei still didn't know his mom was missing. After school, he came back home and then he went to his aunt. He did his homework, he played computer games, and then he stayed with his aunt overnight. But why? His aunt told him that his mom was probably on a business trip and that she will come back later. By that time, Irina's family had already started preparing missing person flyers. When his aunt said that his mom had likely gone to a business trip, Andrei felt like it was a lie, but he didn't say anything. He would remember this many years later that he sensed that it was a lie. The next morning he went to school still not understanding what was happening. 2 or 3 days later, Andrei found out on his own about his mother's disappearance. He saw a missing person flyer with his mother's picture on it, and that's when everything clicked. He understood why he was staying with his aunt, why everybody was looking at him with pity, and why his mom never came home. But this story has a lot more to it, because despite having a boyfriend, Irina was actually married. Yes, she was officially married to a man, Vladimir. They met in 1998, right after she finished school. She was 17 and Vladimir was much older. Soon Irina became pregnant and they got married. In the early 2000s, Vladimir was involved in business, and in 2004 he moved to Moscow for work. Irina stayed in her city Novosibirsk where her parents lived. Just 3 years later, in 2007, Vladimir had a child with another woman, and it feels like Irina didn't really realize that. When it was revealed, of course, she was very depressed. Despite that, they maintained generally good, friendly relationships. Their son Andrei lived between two cities, sometimes with his father in Moscow, sometimes in Novosibirsk with his mother and grandparents. According to some messages Irina left on local forum, she was planning a big wedding one day. She was hoping for that big moment for her. Since her and Vladimir's wedding was in a rush because of her pregnancy, she was dreaming of a big celebration. But in April 2009, those posts changed to a post about betrayal, and it was likely around this time that Irina learned about her husband's double life. Irina and her husband, they agreed on maintaining a healthy relationships. Healthy, how can you say healthy in that situation? Well, as healthy as possible for them, because they had Andrei, so they did it for their son. So every year they went on family vacations and they had a great time together. They have a lot of photos from their vacations, and it seemed like they were a happy family with a double life. It is important to know that Vladimir was offering a divorce, but then it was their mutual decision to preserve the marriage and to raise their son together as much as it possible. Around the same time, she started communicating with the man Alexander, whom he had known for a very long time. The missing person report was describing 28-year-old Irina as looking no older than 24-26. Short, slim, very petite. The photo that was used was taken just a week earlier. And so the search operation began. One day after the disappearance, Alexander wrote a message on the local forum about Irina's disappearance and asking anyone who knows something to contact him. And there is when we have a first witness, you can say. Around midnight that night, a girl was entering the same building that Irina was because she was returning from her night shift. She entered the entrance, and on the elevator on the floor she saw a free newspaper. She took that newspaper, and under that she discovered keys from someone's apartment. She didn't think much of it, and in the morning she posted a notice in the entrance of the building, and Ilya, Irina's brother, identified her keys by that picture. And so it turns out that Irina seemed to enter the elevator and disappeared in the elevator. This event shocked the neighborhood so much that it was the only topic people in the neighborhood could talk about for days. While the police was investigating, people started talking about a strange man that was known in the neighborhood as a local crazy dude. He was physically quite strong and he was repeatedly harassing girls around the neighborhood. One of the search coordinators said that when they were putting up posters with Irina's image, this guy approached them, looked at them and said, "It's a pity I don't have a knife with me." And he tried to tear down all of the posters. Of course, everyone immediately called the police, and that guy was investigated, and he was ruled out as a suspect. He was just a crazy local dude. Alexander also took part in their search. He and his friends made a group that searched for Irina simultaneously with the police. And it is important to know that all those searches were made voluntarily. It was unthinkable for people in the neighborhood. A young girl disappeared, a young girl who had a child. Everyone was disturbed by that situation. Just in 1 week, 2,000 people signed up for a group search. Everyone was so sorry for Andrei. He was a 10-year-old child who was waiting for his mom at home. He was waiting, and she didn't come back. And of course, anyone could be in this situation. In addition, many people knew Alexander, and they knew that he was a good man. They wanted to help find Irina, to help him, because he also was a suspect at some point. Just a week after Irina's disappearance, police opened a criminal case, describing it as a homicide. Because firstly, Irina disappeared in such strange circumstances that it's hard to imagine that something else happened. She may be a runaway, but that was so unlikely. I mean, she had a child at home whom she loved deeply. She loved her son so much, she would not leave him voluntarily. So a week of searches passes and there are still no traces of Irina. People gradually lost hope that she can be found alive. At this time, investigators began closely check Alexander because he was the last one to see Irina. A wave of emotions rose on the local forum where Alexander was quite active. Everyone was discussing this. He was the first one who posted the message about Irina's disappearance on that forum, and he was quite emotional. That message looked sincere. A strange message appeared on the forum from another girl who claimed that not long ago she returned home late, just like Irina. She entered the building, it was quite dark. Suddenly the door opens and a guy in a cap enters. The elevator was already arriving and suddenly this guy grabs her legs and tries to carry her out of the entrance somewhere. The girl screamed so loud and she almost reached the doorbell of her neighbor, so the attacker got scared and let her go and ran away. That was her message. Another witness appeared who allegedly saw a man and a woman walking towards him from that same entrance building where Irina lived. According to him, the woman was clearly not herself and seemed to be hanging on the man, like she was drunk and she was feeling very bad. Police took that information very seriously, and they decided to inspect the basement of the nearby houses, especially because they were not checked before. So the information was not confirmed. They didn't find Irina or anyone else. But during the basement inspection, something was found. In such buildings, their basements are usually connected, and you can enter basically in one entrance, in one basement, and get out somewhere else in another building, in another one. The locks on the basement in the neighboring building, they were changed recently, so someone changed the locks. When the police entered the basement anyway, they found that there were a lot of pipes and a pile of sand pressed down from one side, like someone was sleeping there. And nearby there was a banana peel and instant noodle packaging. And they thought, what if it was Irina? Most likely no. But what if she was held there at some point? But the police investigated that, and the dogs, they didn't find any sign of Irina in that basement. Police went to the cinema, they questioned the staff who confirmed that Irina and Alexander were at the movies that night. However, there were no surveillance cameras. There were no cameras at the roads, there were no cameras at the movies, there were no cameras at the entrance of the building. So basically everything we know is what Alexander told us. But in reality, there is no proof that after dropping Irina off, Alexander went home. In fact, there is no proof that they were even near the apartment building together. Moreover, none of his acquaintances can confirm that he was home afterwards. He was also placed under surveillance, but nothing suspicious was found. The police also checked a version of Alexander harassing Irina, but that was ruled out either. There is one thing that just doesn't sit right with me, is the fact that she never asked her son for permission to go out, and that night she did. She asked if she can go to the movies with Alexander, as if she was looking for a sign not to go. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how I feel. There is also one thing that he wrote on the forum a few days after her disappearance. One user asked him in what mood Irina was when she left the car, and he replied, "There was nothing unusual. As always, the happiest woman in the world." Who answers like that? That's a very strange thing to say. Alexander had known Irina from school. They were, I think, they were studying in the same school. And right now he was making money by doing what he loved, photography. He mainly photographed girls, but that's not a crime. A lot of people do that. He had some property, he had a car. He was doing okay financially. By the way, all his property was checked by investigators, but nothing suspicious was found there. They also checked his social circle, and Alexander was not connected to any crime. But their relationship with Irina were not that simple, because she was married and he knew about that. So Alexander claimed that they had been together for 7 years, so since Irina was 21. But this fact cannot be confirmed by anyone except Alexander. Alexander hoped that eventually Irina would divorce her husband and will marry him. And he said that they actually were planning on getting married. But that information came only from Alexander. None of her family, none of her friends knew about the planned wedding. So it's not really clear if Irina was hiding Alexander because she was married and maybe she didn't want anyone to find out about him. But maybe she didn't plan anything and it was just in Alexander's head. On her social media, Irina sometimes would post pictures with her husband and her son from their vacations, and she captioned them as family. On the forum, Alexander said that investigators were pushing him to give a confession, but he said he was not involved in Irina's disappearance in any way. His car was also checked and no traces of something strange was found. Alexander voluntarily asked for a polygraph test and he passed it. As we know, it doesn't mean much, but since people in the neighborhood already knew him as a good man, everyone kind of believed that he was innocent. But you probably know that the results of the polygraph test are not the evidence in the criminal case. Irina's husband, Vladimir, was also under suspicion. It was proven that he had an alibi and he was in another city at that time, but a version of hiring a killer to remove his wife from the picture was considered. It was not confirmed either way. Police did a DNA examination of the keys and the newspaper they found in the elevator, but no traces of Irina's or someone else's DNA were found. They couldn't find any Irina's DNA in the whole entrance and near the elevator, making it suspicious. Was she even there? Did she even make it to the elevator? Investigators also worked on the version that it could be someone connected to her work activity, but she was a child psychologist. She worked with kids, and it was in a free support center, so that version is very unlikely. So the main two suspects, Irina's husband Vladimir and boyfriend Alexander, they were ruled out as innocent. The police also investigated Irina's brother Ilya, but he didn't have a motive and he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. So the case remained unsolved for 17 years, and in 2025, police reopened it because with new technology, they believe they may be able to solve it. Irina's son is now 27 years old. He works as an Aikido coach, as he always wanted. Her husband Vladimir passed away in April 2025 due to the illness. Alexander is 45 years old now. He is married and he has a child. It is said that he remains very close to Irina's mother, and her mother believes that he is innocent. Because a lot of people still think that it might be Alexander. He doesn't have an alibi and he was the last one to see her. But we remember that he is innocent until proven guilty. There is no any evidence against him. So for now, we will keep an eye on that case, and if anything new will be discovered, I will let you know. And for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.